In this video, I'm going to talk about the idea of a complex imaginary number. And so, first of all, let me give you a definition of what a complex number is. Just included imaginary, sometimes it's called imaginary number, but more than likely you're going to hear it called complex. A complex number has the form a plus bi, where a and b are both real numbers. Now, an example of that would be like if I had this, 2 plus 3i. Now, for those of you wondering, you could be thinking, well, I is simply a variable. Why is there a type of number that has to do with this variable? Well, I actually isn't a variable. I is what is known as the imaginary unit. And where it comes from is I equals the square root of -1. So we don't really have a conventional number that multiplies by itself to give us -1. So we made one. We call it I. Another interesting property about I squared equals -1. Both of these are important to understand about I. And I leads to these complex numbers. First of all, a is the real part of the number. So here, this 2 is what is called the real part. And bi is the imaginary part. And that would be 3i. In this case. Now, since these are numbers, even though they may be complex, they're still numbers. We can perform operations with them. We can add, subtract, multiply, and divide. In this video, I'm going to show you how to add, subtract, and multiply. So let's get to it. Here's the first case. I have 3 plus 7i plus 9 plus 2i. So I have this complex number plus this complex number. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to add the real parts and the imaginary parts. So let's see, I'm going to have a real part. 3 plus 9 gives me 12. 7i plus 2i gives me 9i. It's just like adding variables. So if this were 7x and 2x, I'd have 9x. It's the same idea, but I have an I instead. So adding is pretty simple. You add the real parts, add the complex parts. Now, subtracting takes a little bit more effort. And here's what I'm going to do. I have 5 minus 2i minus 6 plus 4i. So I'm going to treat this like distributing. So what this will be is the same as 5 minus 2i minus 6 minus 4i. So I'm essentially distributing this negative to 6 and 4i. Then I'm going to combine like terms. So here I have 5 minus 6 is -1. Negative 2i minus 4i is -6i. So adding, you add the real, add the complex. Subtracting, subtract the real, subtract the complex. Same thing. Now multiplying requires a little bit more thought. I'm really going to do this first example. So what I'm going to do for multiplying is I'm going to treat it similar to something like this. If you're in Algebra 1, you've probably seen this before, x plus 2. And in order to multiply these, I would use the foiling technique. F-O-I-L. So here's how it works. What I'm going to do is I'm first going to multiply the first terms. And in this case, it would be 2 times 1. So 2 times 1 is 2. Second, I'm going to multiply the outside terms. So that's going to be 2 times -2i, which gives me -4i. Next, I'm going to multiply the inside terms. So it's going to be 5i times 1, so that gives me plus 5i. And last but certainly not least is multiplying the last terms. So I'm going to have 5i times -2i, which gives me -10i squared. From here, I treat it similar to that of a polynomial with combining like terms. However, we need to remember that I squared equals -1. And so what happens here is this becomes 2. Combine these terms to get plus I. And this becomes -10 times -1. Well, then I'm going to multiply this together. So I'm going to have 2 plus I plus 10. And that's going to give me 12 plus I. And that's how you multiply. You basically FOIL it, I squared becomes -1, and then put it all together. So that's a basic introduction to complex numbers, to adding, subtracting, and multiplying complex numbers.